like just in general? I just think that's a fascinating question, like, because, and I don't want to talk too much more because I think that's the episode.
Well, I mean, it's not that, I mean, we're into this, right? It doesn't matter. He's going to edit this thing into anyway. But here's my question. Didn't any of you guys, I mean, I'm curious about your thoughts on this since you're kind of frontline consulting gigs kind of, but this whole thing, the implementation or the delivery of these large language models, AI, ChatGPT, Bard, forget Copilot and all the rest, but didn't every consultant just get an assistant? Did not everybody?
That's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, just get someone to kind of help them do it.
But then didn't every client also just get an assistant that potentially displaces as much?
If our clients knew how to ask good questions, they wouldn't have needed us to begin with.
They don't know how to use email. You think they're going to know how to use this fucking thing? There's no way.
Yeah. I mean, I realize I'm being a little silly about it, but I mean, I think that's it. I mean, quite frankly, I've one of my thinkings about this at the moment is like, I've spent my entire life figuring out how to ask better questions so we could get to the heart of what's really going on. I think I'm well poised to use AI in where I'm headed because most people can't ask a good question.
I've spent my career, because I came through liberal arts, I can't even say the word, I should give the degree back. But I came through that, and that was all about looking at, in my particular case, history, like historical things, and trying to come up with an analysis out of it, right? And so all of that comes down to telling a good story about something and providing insight in. So I think I'm well positioned to take advantage of the tools, because now I don't need a guy that is a great Excel modeler to help me figure out the data. I'll just ask the damn tool, computer, give me what is the average spend?
Computer, tell me.
Hello, computer. Hello, computer.
How do I?
Transparent aluminum.
Aluminum.
I don't know what I was going to say. It can now collate, aggregate, process the data for me. I don't need to learn Excel at all anymore, or frankly, PowerPoint in a few years. In fact, I told Julia this. I was like, the kids that are in college right now at Harvard MBA have gone through a course on Excel modeling, right? And have had to memorize every Excel command. They should just cancel all those classes immediately. All that's gone. In 6 months, no one will care if you know VLOOKUP. It doesn't matter.
But then what's scarier though is the research I'm doing with one of my teams at the moment, which is something called LangChain, which is basically breaking down a problem into a series of prompts, right? So what we're talking about right now is we're going to use this thing to augment ourselves. But now where the research is actually is even in the, the kind of planning and the kind of is almost displacing the person to kind of do that bit. So it's like when we break through that piece, this thing's going to be even more powerful. So it might be like, can you give me a maturity model project for XYZ? And it would then like do all of the stuff that you would do as a consultant. It would then chuck it all potentially back to the client. So, build surveys, build this, build the other. So it's crazy where this is going to go next.
But that's still automating sort of commodity type stuff, right? There's no real thinking and coming up with a framework, right? I mean, give me a framework that is like Porter's 5 forces, but has 6 boxes. Whatever the hell it is, right?
I do agree that's the human dimension that.
It's like, what do I do with that? And then what does it mean, right? I think that's the bit that the tool's not going to be in a place to explain why it's useful, right? Here it is. I've done 1,000 years of research in 5 seconds. Great. You just made it faster. Great. I have the answer, the data that I needed now to make decisions. I still have to make the decisions. How do I do that? By the way,
there's a framework for that too. Ask it how to make a good decision. Ask it for the good or quality decision framework principles and apply those.
I should say, Hey everybody, welcome to Consultants Saying Things. I'm Chris Lockhart. Joined by Phil Yanoff and Oliver Cronk. We're talking about AI as it relates to consulting and consultants. And we'll give it a snappy title in post, right? But for now, that's what we're talking about.
Clearly, crystal ball gazing is dangerous because someone will find this in a few years and go, you were totally wrong. But I personally think this could disrupt consulting quite massively. For sure, it's going to augment consultants. That's a given, right? It's the next Excel on steroids, or it's the next, office macro. But I actually think fundamentally you need to think about what will clients buy in a world where you have these generative tools. What sorts of consulting engagements will still get bought by clients in a world where access to knowledge, and insight has, perhaps the barriers to that have been reduced. So I think the interesting discussion we can have is, what areas of the consulting world are perhaps safer from this sort of disruption, and what areas are, both in terms of skills and in terms of types of work, are effectively going to be automated. And that's a great thing in some cases, because some of this stuff's boring and admin heavy, and it'd be great to have some automation to help with some of that, the boring parts perhaps of the consulting gig. But I for sure think people need to start thinking about how this is going to shake up their proposition, their value proposition to their clients.
Philip Von Yanov, Baron Von Yanov.
Dr. Phil Yanov.
Doctor.
The Right Honorable. Right Reverend Honorable. Yeah.
HRH.
HRH
Yanov.
Careful.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the augmentation part is first off. I think, Oliver, I guess, we'll be thinking about this from the consulting practice to the point where when these practices start shedding employees, if that's how that happens. But I think at the moment, there is an opportunity to deliver more and be, as you said, augmented, right? So this is amplifying what you can do because, again, I know I said this in our pre-call, but it's like every consultant just got an assistant, someone, and multiple assistants. And some of these assistants, it's not just that you can possibly ask a good question and get kind of at least a half-baked answer to start with. Sometimes you might even get a good answer for it, right? But I think that there is this opportunity to just, again, go faster, do more at the moment, and kind of see what the world brings us, right? I think, to Chris's point, we've been in that spot of where we ask questions and we tell stories, and we're basically casting forward a vision of what tomorrow looks like for our clients. And I think that we're still going to be great at that. And now we just have better tools. But it's not to say there isn't disruption coming. I'm not saying that that's not the case. I just don't know where that is yet. And right now, I'm not so worried about being displaced by AI as opposed to being displaced by some guy that asks the AI better questions than I do.
Displaced by someone who thinks that AI gives the answer that a Phil would give when it really doesn't. Because, I'm going to call bullshit on something, Oliver. You said, if the barrier to knowledge and insight is reduced. I don't think at this point in time, these tools provide knowledge or insight, right? They're providing information, right? Or maybe even just data, right? They're providing stuff faster, right? They're aggregating things in maybe ways we weren't thinking about. A really great pivot table, right? Kind of automated pivot, intelligent pivot table. But it's still the question of, well, what the hell does it mean? What does it mean?
Yeah. There is
for me in my business, right? What does it mean if I'm making widgets? What does that mean to me?
There is the spelling out for sure, and it's really just the compressed internet, right? It's kind of it's Wikipedia and various other sort of open knowledge sources. Right. It's only really regurgitating what is already it's the known stuff. So it's not going to help you with the unknown. Perhaps I won't get into the Rumsfeldism of
unknown unknowns.
But yeah, for sure, it's just parroting back to you what it's been trained on. But in a lot of cases, that covers a lot of knowledge gaps. And if you think, in many cases, consulting is just being slightly ahead of your client in some respects, right? And if this sort of reduces the gap, then certain sort of things you'll perhaps turn to this sort of tool rather than a consultant. However, I do agree with what Phil was saying around it augments the consultant. And what I'm hopeful for is, let's face it, we've all been on consulting gigs where the junior people on the consulting team are put under huge amounts of pressure to work over the weekend. And what I'm kind of hoping is this technology allows them to pull the rabbits out of the hat that they often get asked to do without having to kind of completely give up their personal life.
Yeah,
So
I knew you were going to go down that touchy-feely human route.
You know me.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, we've talked about this before. I mean, there's some element of like every manager or senior manager or director or principal or partner on a project really wants that leverage, right? Hey, young people, you get paid pretty well to create these stories. Go away and spend all night doing this. And I want like a revision by 8 o'clock in the morning. A lot of that sort of commodity busy work, right? I think to the point Phil was making, right? It's now you've got the co-pilot there that can do it for you, the automated assistant that can. I mean, now it's as simple as, I need a frame. Hey, computer, right? Computer. I need a framework for comparing the application portfolio of a company between last year and this year, and here's the data that feeds it. I don't know how to organize the data. In the past, some kid would figure that out at the hotel overnight, and we'd look at it the next day. Just let the tool do it. Which begs, I think, the question that we were sort of thinking about here is like, what aspects of consulting now is threatened, or maybe that's too aggressive. Commodity.
Yeah. I don't know that I know the answer to this. My concern, or the people I would be most concerned for, is the people who are called to perform and end up delivering median level work. Because I think what we've done is we've trained these various large language models already to deliver median level work. They can do that.
Yeah. I was talking to someone, Oliver, that we were talking about earlier, and I mentioned, what I thought, look, there are floaters in large consulting organizations, and everyone knows what I'm talking about. These are the people you're like, how did that guy make principal? Like what is going on? How does he survive? He hasn't sold anything in 3 years. What is going on with this? They just kind of float through the organization. They know the right people. They say the right things, right? They check all the right boxes. They work the system, right? All that sort of stuff. And somehow, especially in organizations that don't have up or out model, right? They just sort of survive like a cockroach forever, right? I think now, Phil, to the point you were making, if you are not able to either tell a good story or articulate some insight or craft a good something to generate an emotional response in your client, I think you're in trouble, right? I think we may have exposed with these tools tens of thousands of consultants.
Or conversely, they can use a whole bunch of technologies to continue cruising because they're reliant on the tools to do.
We made it easier for them to hide.
Maybe
potential. Wow.
Maybe. Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, so, to me, where I want to be right now is I'm not spending a bunch of time super concerned about being displaced by this stuff. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there is a powerful tool out here that I think I can use. How do I deploy it? And the thing is, again, for what I'm doing, it's still, using the normally readily trained stuff, ChatGPT, Bard, et cetera. But I'm already talking to people who are wanting to train it on their custom data sets, right? Mm-hmm. So people who are, have, real knowledge banks of various sorts. I mean, and I thought about this even, imagine if I were today, and you pick one, I'm just going to pick Capgemini, but if I were Capgemini today, I'd be going, how do I take everything we've ever produced, all the quality work we produced for clients, and put that into one of these models so that now there is a AI that has our knowledge base in it and we can spit that back out.
Yeah, particularly for sales proposals, right? I mean,
exactly. Marketing material.
Yeah, you want the perfect kind of winning proposal generator, right? Rather than relying on Jim knowing that the deck to use is this one version 5. You have this thing that's trained on the kind of well-performing efforts,
and it knows which which proposals won, right, and which ones did not. And I'm looking for I'm actually I have an RFP due in a couple hours. It's like, so I'm working on something, and it's sort of like, once I get a vision in my head of how I think this thing should go, it's, an hour of just banging it out. Right. But until then, I've been noodling over it for like a week. Right. I'm like, what does it need to look like for this particular client? Right. And so what does that involve? And you guys know this. It's, let me open up the folder of all of the things I've ever done, because I think it's kind of like this thing we did at this place, but that was a slightly different industry. Computer, give me every winning proposal for a healthcare company in California, right, over the past 10 years. And I think that's a great use case or slides, individual slides. Like I remember, I think it's still there, right? The slide library in SharePoint. I remember we used to use that a lot. It's like, what is the framework we use for a maturity model for assessing cloud readiness? Boom, here it is. This is the slide. You don't have to do anything. This is the slide. Don't do anything. Yeah. Just stick it in your deck, right? And I think there's going to be more of that, because that, honestly, if you think about it, it's pretty commodity, low level work.
And already, so this week, I'm kicking off or proposing a bunch of R&D projects. And I've been saying to it, hey, can you write me a project scope or a project brief document for X? And the first time it's crap. And I'm going, yeah, I need to give it a bit more information. So I give it a paragraph of what's in my head about this project. And bang, it comes back with like an 80% good enough project template that I can then just tailor. Those sorts of like rinse and repeat things are just going to be so much easier going forward. But you are right that the human interaction stuff. And Phil, I'm not surprised that you're not scared, because I guess your business is more about, communicating and community and, people. And that is probably arguably the kind of area where this isn't going to disrupt as much. I think the human to human selling and relationship building piece, AI can't do that.
But isn't that consulting, Phil? Isn't that consulting?
No, I appreciate what Oliver's saying, maybe you're in this spot.
You're so old that AI can't replace you.
No. It's the thing that's actually making me not worried is hubris. I'm just thinking I'm smarter than most cats, and I'm going to ask better questions, and it's going to give me better answers. And that's all I'm hoping for, right? I'm hoping that, you're
going to use the tool for competitive advantage based on the strengths to augment your strengths as opposed to raise your weaknesses.
Yeah. Because, people want me for whatever. And the thing is, I'm already like, I'll take stuff that I've written and say, okay, how does this read? Or how can I improve this or whatever? But, I'll feed it whole paragraphs that I have written and saying, is this clear? And I love that it'll like not just hand me back a Fleisch-Kincaid score, grade levels and all that kind of stuff, but it'll say, oh, well, this sentence was kind of complicated. And so I fixed it like this. And then I can say, I like it or I don't like it and whatever. But so I like that really well. But I think it's a powerful tool, and I just see it as a way to go faster. I can deliver. And guess what? I can also deliver when I don't feel like it now sometimes, right? Because there's like a point where it's like, I need to write this thing, but I just don't have it in me. And I'll say, give me this, and it'll give me a thing. And here's what it does. It either gives me something that's 80, like you said, 80% good enough, and then I fix it, or it just sucks and it pisses me off to the point that I write the good thing and spit it out. That's all it takes.
I'm going to show this thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to show Clippy.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's often good at breaking the ice or kind of getting you started, because often writer's block is a bit of a problem, right? How am I going to talk about this thing? Well, let's just see what it has to say. Oh no, that's rubbish. But it's given me, it's sort of seeded me. It's maybe come up with something better. So it's kind of got you started.
I'll give you a perfect example.
Yesterday.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Phil.
No, I was the example that I used. So I was doing the podcast that I do with Scott, and I did the recording. And so I said, "Oh, I need an outline." And so I asked it for give me some ideas and on this. And they were terrible. So what I did is I took all 5 points and said, I said, you might read a magazine article that says this, but this is the right way to do this. And I took every one of them, just pushed against all 5 points, and said, "Here we go."
On the WhatsApp channel, are all of these questions? Did you generate them using Bard?
I don't know. Maybe.
That's a yes then.
I think that's a
no,
yes.
no. But well, I mean, well, first off, I don't know if it was Bard, if it was Chat GPT, but I started a thing, and so then I go through and look at it and say, well, I don't like this, or like, oh, here's the thing. For example, let me just say this: the very last question is a question I wouldn't have included, but I thought Oliver probably wants to talk about that because that's right down his thing. And then I said, just leave all that. So I went through them beat by beat and said, okay, this makes sense. This does not. And then I edited them and I said, no. And I said, look, this is just something to start with. Here's the thing. I'm convinced that when the 3 or 4 of us get together, this will be a worthwhile conversation. We're not going to go down some path that's just nonsensical, but having a little bit of a framework to kind of get you started is just a way to say, okay, I'm not worried now. Let's just go. There's a map, even if the map is incomplete.
I'll take it down a nonsensical path. So I've got a really good example of a use case that I plan to use that would have helped me in the past. Right. When I wrote the award-winning bestseller, The People Problem, available on Amazon.com. Do you have a copy? Do you guys have a copy?
I do, actually. Yeah.
Anyway.
There it is right there. You can see the ukulele back there, right?
I see that, the tome over there. For those of you who don't know, I don't know who that would be, but for those who don't know, right? So when I wrote this book, I wrote it actually in like between 2012 and 2015. And I wrote it as a series of what I was planning to be blog posts, right? Which is why it's structured that way. It's structured like a collection of, I called them vignettes, but I mean, they're blog posts, really, if you think about it, right? They subsequently became blog posts. You should still buy the book because there's more in there than just on the website. But if you go to chrisonea.com.
No, you should buy the book because I don't get paid when you read my blog post.
That's true. chrisonea.com. I'll put the link in the thing. You'll see a lot of this content that's out there. And I remember sitting in a room with Shashi, who we know and love. And he was like, what is this book going to be about? And I'm like, I don't know. And it took us an entire day of client time, actually, but it was an entire day where we sorry, where it was credentializing, so it was worth it. It was billable, but we spent an entire day sort of organizing the thought process. Right? If I had fed all these things into a tool and said, "Give me a narrative," I think I might have had something different. So I'm going to use that with what I'm writing right now because I think that is useful. And the one thing I want to be careful of, and I actually had a question for the both of you, is there a risk of losing your voice, your authentic voice, and just becoming a homogenized, bland? If I asked it and Oliver asked it and Phil asked it, it would give the same fucking answer, right?
I just describe this as the gray goo type problem. Right?
I love that. I love the gray goo.
So, for those that don't know, gray goo is like the kind of disaster scenario when nanobots go wrong. Right. Kind of just take everything in the universe and turn it into this gray gunk.
Yeah.
And that's what I fear we could have with these generative technologies is they take all of our individual personalities, all our individual writing styles, and they average it out to the kind of average reader, and everything starts looking very much the same. So I think there is that risk, but I think this is where the art is to know when to use the tool and when to use. It's kind of like the thing I like about it though is it's like having an editor that's not precious about upsetting you. To the point Phil was making earlier about how could I rewrite this? You get raw kind of like statistical, mathematical kind of responses to how could this English be restructured? And you need to understand that's what it's doing. And therefore there is nothing wrong with going, do you know what? Yes, I know that might be a better way of structuring it for readability, but my style is to say it like that. So I'm going to keep it in and I'm going to keep it.
But isn't that just like super powered grammar check in Word? Right. So Microsoft.
Let me just say. I accept that.
Just complete the thought, right? Which is Microsoft Word didn't put copy editors out of business with grammar check.
Correct. And this is in fact a copy editor. And in fact, it can, I think, because I've given it like bigger pieces, and it can reorganize the thoughts if you want it to, right? So it can put, A, B, and C, or, like I said, I think. And we're at the beginning of this, right? The question is, why I'm still at, why would you not be using this tool to be better at what you do?
Are we? What parts of consulting will this take over?
So at the moment, it's a tool and it's generating bits. But if you think these things are learning from how they're being used, which is almost certainly the case with ChatGPT, this is where there are concerns about, putting your company IP into these solutions, because they're potentially learning, and there's nothing stopping them building the next generation of model, which has the context the human user is putting into it. This is where having your own private models and the open source models that you can now run locally are an interesting sort of alternative, because you're not giving away your IP. You're keeping it within the walled garden. So that there is that. Like, if you are ultra paranoid, potentially you could say, well, I'm worried about this thing, because if I'm using it all the time and it's seeing how I'm kind of iterating and feeding back on what it's giving me, you're potentially training your replacement if you're not careful. Depending on what you do, of course. I'm sure there's more to your job than just what you're interacting with these tools doing.
Well, one of the things I said, to someone recently was that, because they said something similar, Oliver, right? Which is, it's going to be able to do the job of the consultant. And I pushed back and I said, I think it's going to be able to do the job of the contractor, where
or the analyst,
right? Where, the developer, right? And, we just did in my firm a webinar last week, and it's part of a practice area we're developing, which is in partnership with GitHub. And, they've got their Copilot product. And of course, Microsoft's rolling Copilot out for everything. But the development rate goes up like 55%. It's 55% faster on average across all languages and all platforms using the tool. And one of the reasons for that is because there's something like it's almost a 50 to, depending on how you're looking at it, right? 40 to 60% acceptance rate of the suggestions. The code is being written now by the tool.
Right.
So, and the quality's better. It's commented, it's documented, it's structured properly. It takes into consideration the security aspects. You now have better quality, which means you need less testing, right? You now have faster change data capture. You've got better, all of the things that in the development lifecycle, right, that you would expect are going to take X amount of time and Y amount of resources, now can do it a lot faster with less resources, fewer people. So in those particular cases, I think you're looking at, there's the job of the developer. You have to now elevate your skill where you are going to be developer analyst or something, where you're now sort of analyzing the output of this stuff and making sure it fits with what the strategy is. But the writing of it, I think if you are training to be a developer of Python code, and that's what you want to be when you grow up, I think you need to amp it up.
It's ironic, isn't it? We were telling our kids, oh, you need to learn to code. And now all of a sudden we're going, oh, maybe not.
Maybe you need to know how to solve problems, which always was a good one, right? And I think that's a particularly good one. Let me just say too, I think your point is right on, but let me just say, I started out my career, if you will, writing COBOL and Fortran, and I'm not doing that anymore.
But you elevated. Right. You adapted, you changed.
And let me tell you, it was always my intent. I looked at it and I thought, I'm writing this and I'm getting paid this. And I look at those guys over there with a different language set and a different skill set, and they're getting paid better. And I'd like, let's go that way. I would head in that direction. Right. So I went from DOS to Unix. I went from single user systems to multi-user systems to big deployed, well deployed stuff. But at all the time I was looking, it's like, all right, I like what I'm doing. Who pays the best?
Yeah. But doesn't it come down to that, which is, if you are able to adapt and change, and you are taking the role of the thinker, rather than the executor or the doer, you're probably in a better position.
The growth mindset wins, and looking a little bit further out wins. And there's a danger, I think, that people get a little bit stuck in their silo and in their current role. And for every Phil who looks at the opportunities to kind of make a leap to the next role, there is a Jane or a Bob or whoever who isn't. They are still staying. They like the coding, but they like what they're doing. They're not aware of, or don't have the desire to kind of progress to that next thing. So I think it depends on what kind of cat you are. The other thing is, as you probably know by now, I'm a bit of a non-linear thinker. And I think right now, a lot of people are going, oh, this is great. I've got this tool to do this, that, and the other. I'm thinking a few steps ahead where...
Is that what you call it? Non-linear thinker? Just batshit, aren't you? Just bonkers.
It's me trying to like make myself sound cleverer than I actually could just I'm a complete and utter lunatic. But like, what does this mean, like in the medium term? And it's obviously really hard because it's like this cone of possibilities where it's just everything from just slightly augmenting, improving us, all the way through to completely disrupting. The reality is it's somewhere in the middle, I think. And to your point about software industry, for more technical consulting, I think this is far more of a game changer than perhaps if you are in a more people orientated consulting gig.
I think he's absolutely right in that there are people who are comfortable with what's happening and people that are uncomfortable. But I don't think the reality is necessarily different for them. I think it's just what's going on inside their head. And I think I'd like to think it is certainly true that there for some people, this could be very easily disruptive. And again, I'm going to say what I did before. If you are doing less than median work at what you do, you are in jeopardy because this can do median level work, right? It can perform that kind of thing. So the question is, what can you do that is not that work, right? What can you do that's interesting, more elevated? And it's not that you won't be training it for the next version, but if it's like any other wave, you're hopefully just going to ride this thing out. I'm hopeful. I'm not. I mean, it may destroy us all, but I'm hopeful.
I was going to say,
I'll make good money while it's.
There won't be a 10-year horizon because the singularity is going to happen in 5 years.
I mean, there's certainly an opportunity right now to advise on where this fits into clients, operating models and.
So let's talk about that. Right? Yeah. What opportunities are there coming out of this? I've got one that I was thinking of just the other day, right? Which is, you have a car wreck, and in the US, you've got the app with the insurance thing on it. You take a picture of the car wreck. And, there's an auto adjudication that happens and whatever, right? So they apply some business rules and they say, oh yeah, that's a complete loss, or, hey, that bumper will be 1,500. How do they know that image is authentic? I just used whatever to create it and, uploaded it. They don't know that it's real. I think there's an opportunity of AI, infosec verification and security, something right? Validate, coming up with a way to validate that the text that was written by a person and not a bot. And I know people are working on that, right? But the images, the videos, spotting deep fakes, because maybe we can kind of do it now. And it's going to get so good that, I think it's my mother calling, asking for money. It looks like her on FaceTime. Sounds like her. She's using all the right words. She knows all the right history.
I just did a thing about this week. The local TV station called me and asked me about this exact scam where people were doing voice identity kind of stuff, where people didn't understand who was calling. And I was like, I mean, you have to be the human in this case, right? And say, I don't know if that's true or not. Stop and call back. How do I verify, right?
So taking it from sort of that one-on-one, particular use cases where maybe they've got solutions for that but you scale it to, giant enterprise type scenarios. I think there's a consulting opportunity there for someone to enter a practice that says, we'll help you figure out how to tell truth. We'll call the consulting company Pravda.
I know it's
nice. I like that. I was going down the philosophical bent, right? It's epistemology, right? We're trying to figure out, what do you really know? What can you know?
I mean, I think this is the biggest challenge of our time. I think, and we've already seen it, right, on social media. How do you verify information is true? Like, people share stuff all the time, and it's like, how do I know that's not just some garbage? How do I verify? And but I think technology does provide some of the solutions if we're willing to kind of explore that, and create citations, create kind of. I think that the linked data thing is the thing that's most promising for me. I've had some really interesting conversations with clients recently around using some of the semantic web type technologies that exist. That you can effectively then create this like chain of information and this sort of schema that sort of helps you validate where some of this information comes from. And I think your car insurance one's really interesting because I know that app has existed for a while, certainly in Europe. And so maybe it's sort of stuff that's too perfect, but then I guess the AI will start introducing, the kind of noise.
Imperfections. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to become an arms race, isn't it? Between, the AI generator and the AI police.
Well, and so that's what I think. We were looking for opportunities. Opportunities exist at that intersection of change and uncertainty, right? And it's like there is a lot of change here and a lot of uncertainty here, and the smart cats are going to be the ones that figure out how to profit off of it.
And the other opportunity that we were talking about before this just now was we're talking about a lot about generation at the moment, like generating content. I actually think that where the real opportunity right now is in the processing. I want something to help me just make sense of all of this fire hose of information I'm having to process day in, day out. I want to tap into some of this power to sort of help me understand what is the most important email in my inbox right now that I should respond to. And maybe there are a bunch of others that you can help me with suggested replies. I don't necessarily want you to reply on on my behalf. I want to check those before they go out the door. But I think something just to help us all with like the crazy information age we're living in at the moment would be very, very helpful.
Yeah. Someone developed that app that when I come back from vacation and I open Outlook, it says, here are the things you got to do. And by the way, I've marked all 3,000 emails as read, and I've blocked the spam and scheduled the things that needed to be scheduled for you, right? Your digital assistant, Phil, that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It's finally here. We thought it was going to be a Palm Pilot. It's not. It's AI Clippy in Outlook.
Well, it's the same. I mean, the thing is they're just getting smarter and probably capable of more. We hope. We'll see. But again, I think
is there opportunity, Phil? Is there opportunity?
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. I mean, this is brand new fertile ground, and it's obviously we don't want just Sam Altman-Fried be the only one that gets rich off of this, right? And how can we figure out how to make this do some good stuff on our own part? I mean, I think there's lots of risk, but I think we got to be able to figure out how to make this do good stuff where we are.
That sounds pretty good. Is that a final thought?
It is a final thought. And I'll tell you why, because it's like, I don't want to get into the, what are the opportunities or requirements for regulation? How could we do that? I think there's a lot of bad actors in that space. And I think that is truly uncertain at the moment. Let me tell you a thing about this, which I think is really great. Oliver won't think this is as great as maybe you and I might, is that, this happens to be a technology where at the moment we've got a lead. We've got a little bit of a lead here right now, right? Luckily for us, it wasn't some adverse foreign power that's come to us with this technology saying we've figured this out ahead of you and we're doing fine. That's kind of cool.
I mean, it's Memorial Day weekend here in the United States. So the UK is sort of an adversarial foreign power, isn't it? It has been.
Nice. July 4th.
Right.
July 4th.
Yeah. That makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, I think we're in a neat spot, but I think we're just coming together. And there's just, again, what's kind of fun is, and I hope it sounds like you guys are doing the same thing, go out and just listen to your really smart and clever and resource laden friends talk about what they think it might be able to do. Because there's going to be a ton of bad ideas out there. But in the middle of all of this, there's this 2 or 3 things that really work. I mean, I'm seeing smart people say stupid things, but I'm also sifting for the gold. I realize at this moment, I'm just sifting for the real nuggets.
So I'm stuck. Here's my final thought on this really is I'm stuck with, is this apps, right? Circa 2005 or 6.
Yeah. 4GLs.
Yeah. Or is this Segway? It's going to revolution. The automobile will go away because of Segway. Right. And where are we today? Right. Or is this going to be, mobile channel, today, right? You don't put on your LinkedIn, I'm certified in mobile, right? Or whatever, right? It's just like, it's part of business. It is just part of doing business. If you are selling something and you don't have an app, you have to have an app. You have to have a mobile channel. You have to have your website optimized for devices, right? It's just part of what you do. So don't you think in 5 or 10 years, it'll just be part of what we do? There will be no Excel. There'll be no Word. There'll be no PowerPoint. It'll simply be Microsoft Clippy, right? And it's like, you just tell it, I need a presentation that does this, and it'll just create it for you. Won't it just be part of what we do? That's what I'm thinking, right? I don't know that there's an answer to that, right? We, as Phil said, if you're in the Kurzweil crowd, it's like we're all dead in 5 years. So,
yeah.
Oliver, what do you think? You got a final thought on this?
I think it's not the singularity, at least not yet. It's still, exploiting statistics and probabilities. It's just it's a very smart calculator that's got some emergent properties that are kind of cool. But actually, from doing R&D projects with it, there are still some serious limitations to this tech, right? And it still requires a human being to supervise it and check what's okay and what's not. So I think there are some massive opportunities out there. I think people need to be aware of what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. Look for the opportunities, as Phil says, but also be wary of the risks that this brings to the organization as well. It's an exciting time. I think I posted recently a blog, and one of the things I said is I think the architecture is exciting again, because for a while, technology architecture has kind of been a little bit rinse and repeat. Oh yeah, we'll stick it on the cloud. It'll have this sort of database here. It'll have this API. This is truly causing us to kind of scratch our heads a little bit and go, right, where does this technology fit in, and how do we get the best out of it? How do we manage the risk? How do we kind of integrate it with our organizations? So no, I think it's going to be really cool. There's going to be a lot of consulting opportunities, but I think there's also it does require a little bit of crystal ball gazing and going, what if this thing takes this thing off our plates? What does that mean? Well, what if clients start using this thing to do this? Well, what does that? And there's a little bit of a need for a bit of what ifing here.
What ifing? We'll leave it at that. This whole thing is what if. What do we think about AI? It's about what ifing. That's so British.
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmesing. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Deductions.
Yeah.
Still British.
No. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Bill Yanoff, Oliver Cronk. I'm Chris Lockhart. Thank you, everybody. We'll see everyone next time. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
I'm kind of curious about what you guys think about this, or what your current. I mean, obviously, you've got the concerns about ingesting client data in it or ingesting proprietary data. That's an issue. The other thing I could see is, what are you guys doing, or what is your thinking or teaching others to do about the hallucinating? I mean, the stuff that I get is nuts. I mean, I'll ask it for a list of 8 things, 6 of which are right, and 2, it just made that shit up. I mean, it's just nuts. That is not a thing that exists in the real world, and it just created it.
And that's the trouble, because it's generative. It's kind of this creative technology. Yeah. It's non-deterministic. It's a degree of it randomly comes up with answers, and it will come up with different answers when you run it multiple times. So that's why I'm really passionate about pairing it with the right technologies to keep it honest. That's where I think state of the art is right now. So, for example, I'm working with Retail Bank about pairing it with a knowledge graph. So a knowledge graph has like the facts about the customer and the facts about the financial product or whatever. And it then is creating sophisticated prompts to the LLM. So you're not just letting the LLM loose on your problem, you're like managing it and prompting it in a really careful way. And you're then checking the output, Yeah. I think there's an aggregate. I think everyone's getting really, really excited about LLMs on their own. It's actually a component of a more sophisticated solution. That's what I'm really excited about.
You're doing that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the first industry to adopt any new technology, of course, is adult entertainment, right? It's porn. And that's not so ethical over there. If you think about the kind of stuff that's allegedly going on.
They're not as ethical as, say, Wells Fargo or something. Oh, wait, hold on.
I don't know about
that. Please don't put this in the episode. So you're probably going to.
Definitely not.
There are some serious problems with some of this tech that aren't resolved yet.
So I got a question about one more piece of that, right? So we already know that search engines are doing things like, well, that chick must be pregnant because she asked about this, this, and this, right? So how much better when you're actually going back and forth with an AI assistant about these, the questions will be deeper. It's not just like a surface level search. I might be asking it a very specific question, which tells it a lot about me. Where do we go with that? I mean, and you guys have, again, proprietary data, client data, et cetera, stuff that they can't afford. I mean, they've spent a fortune amassing this data. You certainly can't afford to be having someone else have access to it.
Well, it depends. It depends.
LLM.
Is the secret sauce at this client the data? We have clients who are resellers. The data is public. So their data is not the secret sauce. What they do with it, how they package it into products and resell, right? That becomes their secret sauce. I don't know the answer to that, right? I mean, I hesitate to think about what it could do with financial data, personal banking data.
Sure.
Right. I think this is the unknown, right? What are all the unintended consequences of letting this thing loose?
The positive spin on the personal financial data is something I am actually working with a retail bank customer on, which is how do you democratize access to financial advice? So if you can stop it hallucinating and you can control it and get it to give sensible financial advice, then all of a sudden, decent financial advice isn't just the domain of high net worth individuals who have a human advisor. You can potentially provide, financial literacy to people that don't currently have it and are missing out because they don't have access to that sort of advice.
Doesn't it put quants out of business? People that, brokers and hedge fund managers. I mean, doesn't this take because there's no art there, right? Or am I simplifying it too much? Is there art in being a hedge fund manager, or is it just statistical probability? I don't know. And I guess what I'm saying is there are travel agencies are gone, right? There are whole industries that could simply.
But travel agencies have been going for a while. I mean, that is probably.
No, I know. What I'm saying is, search Google, Yahoo, Netscape killed travel agencies, right?
Yeah.
So will this kill some industries while creating other ones? I suspect it will, right?
I think the answer to your financial services one depends whether you think the markets behave entirely rationally and statistically, and I think that's an open question, and people have different views on that. But yeah.
Did you hear? By the way, Professor Scott Galloway, told a story on their podcast this week that basically 15 years ago, one of the marketing guys from the Stern School did a thing where basically he analyzed air travel for CEOs of companies. And he could tell based on where they were going on vacation, where their next earnings report would be positive or negative. Because if they were going to a swanky joint, he knew that he could tell and predict where, you could go back and back analyze the numbers. But the point is, this is, again, one of those spots where a lot of data in figuring, in analyzing that data might give you access to some insight to your quant question.
Earth observation data, for example, is being used for that as well, right? I mean, if you look at satellite imagery of car dealerships or car production plants or farms, there's a whole bunch of data that you can now analyze to predict yields
right.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I'm a little more dystopian. I think this thing will be difficult to harness, in part because it's not smarter than we are, because it really is used. Its intelligence comes from our knowledge, right? It's going to put things together in different ways, and that creates the hallucinations. But it's faster. It's so much faster than we are.
Right.
That I think it's going to be used for nefarious purposes.
It's faster, and it'll accidentally do things. Yeah, it'll accidentally do things wrong.
Yeah, but the thing is it's not all junk. Some of it's really important. It's just
how do you filter the signal from the noise? Yeah.
I can't read it all. What if it's all signal? Right?
The
what if
universe
90%
needs
of
your
it is
attention.
signal? And the way in the past to get attention for the thing that you're sending is, harassing people or all caps or, flashing important things or whatever. So that would help if they could figure out how to have the thing read it for me and give me the abridged version of everything that happened yesterday. Right?
Yeah, I've come back from leave. give me a summary of what I need to know. What messages did I see?
Right.
And the other thing I hope it can do is sort out the thing where you read something on one device, but another device doesn't realize you know what I mean? So you get notifications on your mobile and your desktop and various other places.
Yeah.
And they're not smart. They don't know when you've read it already. And it's like, no, I've already read that. I don't need you to tell me that's unread because I've read it.
Who does that? Who does that? I mean, Gmail doesn't do that. I mean, Gmail and Google Chat and
no, I think you're talking about. Are you talking about Outlook, Oliver? Or?
Yeah, I'm talking about the notifications I get for like Slack and like just. I would like a global notification thing that could just like
manage cross-vendor, cross-platform.
Yeah,
awareness.
Yeah. But it was worse when I had two phones. At least I've only got one phone now.
What I hope AI can fix is this thing where, for whatever reason, it tells me about meetings that happened like 18 days ago. The pop-up, you've missed the meeting that started 18 days ago. I'm like, what is the point of that notification? I don't understand. That's got to be a setting. But, God help you in any of the tools now, if you need to change a setting, like, where the fuck is that? Right? It's like...
Yeah, the only time I can think that's useful is when it was a reminder to do a piece of work and it pings up and goes, oh yeah, 2 days ago you were supposed to do that. I'm like, oh yeah, I better do that, hadn't I?
Okay, yeah. If you take advantage of that, I couldn't even figure out how to set out of office so that it looked consistent across everyone's calendars. I set what I thought was out of office, and it came in some people's. It was like it showed me as unavailable all day long, and other people's they could still schedule meetings with me. I mean, it was just bizarre, right? It's just like, so fuck it. I don't even know how to use it. So fuck it. I'm not going to use it. That's where I'm at with all of this. And maybe I'm just too old now. Maybe it's like how do I set the time on the VCR? Maybe that's what it is. But I'm literally at the.
But maybe it will help us in our grumpy middle ages, right? That it will save us. It will work out. Oh yeah, Phil, this is how you set the VCR. It's like this. I'll set it for you. Don't worry about it. Just tell me what you want to record, and I'll sort it for you. That's what I'm hopeful for.
But even that. Right. So we use YouTube TV, right? And it's extremely useful in that, like, hey, I would like to watch Expedition Unknown on the Discovery Channel. And I don't know when the hell it airs. I don't care, right? It's like, just show me every episode of that, right? And it just finds them all and records them all, right? And that's particularly useful. But some of this other stuff, I feel like it's making our lives harder. It's not solving problems, it's creating problems.
Because the thing is, everything wants the same thing from you, and it is your scarce resource. It's your time. Everything wants your time. Netflix wants your time. HBO used to want your time. Now they get this Max thing. They can't talk to anybody. No. But they've just given up on all of the world. But whether it's Netflix or Gmail or Slack or Teams or whatever, everything's like they want, we talk about this attention economy. It is the thing I just don't have. I mean, everything is designed to swallow up every last second of your attention. Everything.
Somebody solve that problem, right?
I genuinely think there is a massive business opportunity in an assistant that just helps you with the craziness that is the modern world. And
but isn't that what Siri was supposed to be? Isn't that what Google? Like, remember the thing where Google's going to call and make dinner reservations for you and stuff like that.
That works, by the way.
Yeah, I know it does, but
yeah. So that is kind of a buying back. But the thing, that's the tiny thing. The big thing is you're still going into Google to make all these decisions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody fixes it because basically everybody wants it. And what is AI really doing on the front end of this stuff? I mean, you go out to LinkedIn or you go to Twitter or whatever, go to any social place where people think having great conversations is the reason we're here. And basically they're using AI to generate crappy conversations because they can't figure out how to start one on their own.
Right. Well, yeah. So this was I don't know if anyone saw it, but I had sort of a Luddite moment. And, it was one of these posts where like, here are all the prompts for ChatGPT so you can be like a super user and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, so our IQ has already dropped 8 points for the first time in history, right? And now we're going to make people have the ability to be even stupider than they are today, right? We're going to automate the creation of a thank you note. Really? That's what we're doing. That's progress. Is that what we're calling it? Because that's bonkers. That's what I think.
I'm going to say,
thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.
When I have to write that thank you note to people that I don't really like, I actually like having ChatGPT for that tool, right?
Yeah.
I'm the one who asked ChatGPT, what do you say after a kid's band concert that wasn't particularly good?
Oh, yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
And what did it say? What did it say?
It was like, oh, I really appreciate your efforts, that kind of stuff, right? Things you could have thought of on your own.
That was really brave.
Yeah, that was really brave. I appreciate your courage, Chris. Thank you for bringing that forward to us.